I was wondering, where does all this self-loathing come from? I mean, where does all this self-loathing come from? Because I've noticed that it just isn't in me. I've noticed it in others. Where does all this self-loathing come from? And as I was really reflecting on this, I was thinking, well, I think it comes from a lot of different places. I think that's the main goal of marketing, is to make us loathe ourselves. We're too old, we're too wrinkly, we're too fat, our hair's too gray, we need to buy this product and put on this cream and take these pills. And, it's just like you're not good enough the way you are. So some of the self-loathing comes from maybe marketing. And, I think some of it comes from just our childhood experiences and growing up. And, sometimes our peers could just be awfully cruel. If you think about it, can't they? Others, awfully cruel. So maybe some of that self-loathing comes from others. But then I thought about it, sadly, I think there was some self-loathing that actually came to me because some of the preaching that I heard done. Have you ever had one of those? You're all sinners. The good old hell and damnation preaching. You're all worthless. I remember sitting there one time listening to one. I'm like, this so is not working for me. I mean, does this work for you? That type of technique? I'm going to scare you into heaven. The sad reality is I found that it was just contributing to my self-loathing. I mean, all it did was make me focus on the bad in me and focus on the bad in others. So much so that unfortunately I overlooked the good in me. It was just focusing on everything that was wrong with me. So this form of spiritual support didn't work for me. But then the other extreme didn't work for me either. There were those that were so holy, they just wanted nothing to do with me. They just wanted to hang out with all the other holy people. Just like kind of wall themselves into a monastery, and we'll just rub elbows with other holy people, but we don't want anything to do with you, you sinners, you worldly people, you. That didn't work for me either. Does that work for you? Does that help you to be a better person, to help you to grow in your spiritual life? That's why I was enjoying reading the Winter Night trilogy. And in this trilogy, there were two priests just like the two that I just described. There was the one that was good at making everybody feel terrible about themselves, who was constantly reminding them of how bad and awful and wicked they were. And then there was the other priest in the story who was the same way, so judgmental. He just wanted nothing to do with the wicked. And then we had, who I found to be the inspiration, the main character of the Winter Night trilogy was Vasya. Vasya. And at one point, she says the most insightful thing. She said, "Men are also wicked," Vasya returned passionately, "and good, and everything in between. Charity are sometimes wise and sometimes foolish, sometimes good and sometimes cruel. Did not God make charity as he made everything else in heaven and earth?" You see, what was so heroic about Vasya is she was able to see the good in everyone. And she fought for everyone. Her message was very clear. They're not all bad. They're not all bad. She could see the good in everyone. And so it made from some incredible plot twist in the story where she took someone that I thought was just down and out evil and should be he just had to be done away with. And she started working with him, saw the good in him, and said, you know what? If we recognize the good in others and all work together with the good in others, then we can all together overcome evil. She was able to see the good in others and that not all were bad. That is what we really experienced in today's gospel with the woman at the well. Didn't you love what the woman at the well said to Jesus in the Gospel of John chapter 4, verse 9? The Samaritan woman said to him, "How can you, a Jew, ask me, a Samaritan woman, for a drink? How can you, a Jew, ask me, a Samaritan woman, for a drink?" Tells you an awful lot about society back then, which actually I think gives insight. Jesus didn't let ethnicity, gender, cultural practices, religious restraints, or past behavior keep him from striking up a conversation with the woman at the well. He didn't let any of that stop him from talking to her. And he knew who she was. He knew what her past was. Go and call your husband, he says to her. And she's like, whoops, I don't have a husband. And he said to her, well, that's pretty accurate. You had 5, and the one you're living with right now is not your husband. But did he just focus on that? Or was he able to see the good in her? And he made himself present to her and engaged her in such a way that it helped her to be who God wanted her to be. Because the reality is, for her to be getting water out of the well at noon in that part of the country, that's the hottest time of the day. She was obviously trying to avoid everybody else that would be coming to the well in the morning or the early evening. Because I wonder what her view was of herself. I wonder if she had some self-loathing because of the struggles she had had in the past. And yet Jesus took her, engaged her, and then she went forth and witnessed to the very people she was avoiding, and they listened to her. And they came to believe because of her. And that is what Jesus does to each one of us. Because there's times through our self-loathing, we don't feel ourselves worthy enough for Jesus to strike up a conversation with us. There's so much self-loathing that we don't think that, we're worth saving, that there's nothing good in us. And wait a minute, that's not what Jesus is saying. Jesus, yes, wants us to know where we need to grow. That's the work of the Spirit through us, who convicts us that, I'm not perfect. But the Spirit of the Lord doesn't convict us to condemn us and put us down. The Spirit of the Lord convicts us to convert us, to help us turn our lives around and away from this self-loathing, to become more of what God created us to be all that God wants us to be, to see the good in ourselves that God sees in us, and then to apply it to others, to see the good in others, to recognize they're not all bad, to see the good that is in others, and then encourage that good, to leverage that good, to utilize that good, so that together with that good, then we can bring an end to the evil that we so struggle with. Let us see how deepening a relationship with the Spirit helps us to see, where we need to grow, but most especially how we need to turn our lives around in such a direction that we become all that God created us to be.